Oh my.
So I'm often asked, how did you guys meet each other? Which is kind of funny. It's like a story of any two people when they come together. How did we meet? What's your answer to that question?
Well, like most important relationships in my life, it was a direct connection through a mutual friend. Like that's how I met Benjamin. That's if I really think about all the most important high quality relationships, almost all of them, not all of them, but almost all of them came because there was a connector, a bridge. So we were connected through a mutual friend, and initially you were going to just come to one of our retreats at Musa in Mexico, which was specifically being curated for like the invitation, what's the word? Brief. The invitation brief was, let's invite people that are really well connected and entrepreneurial and on a path of personal transformation. Like that, those are the people we want to meet. Those are the people we want to invite to this retreat. So you checked all those boxes.
No.
So we were introduced, and then we had a call with you, and you were not able to attend that retreat, but there was a seed planted. And then there was a knowing that you might have a puzzle piece for what we were building. And we were flailing a little bit at the time as an organization. We were like, we don't know what we're doing. We're like, wait, who is this woman? She seems to know things. She's asking very good questions that we don't have answers to. We should probably explore hiring her. So that's how it began.
Yeah, for me, I was in a place of not knowing what I wanted to do and also knowing that I'm not a very good employee. And I was like, I don't know if I can work for or with anyone again. Like I haven't done anything beyond my own thing for so long. How will that take shape? And am I even capable of being in a passenger seat? And our mutual friend was so certain, insistent, really. He was like, just talk to them. I thought, oh my God, okay, like I'll talk to them. But there was immediately for me a resonance in the mission of what you were building was almost a one for one of really, I think if we look at a mission, it's the purpose of why you're building something, and there's many possible solutions to that, right? And so I think of what I was building was one recipe, and that ended up not being the right recipe for me actually as a person. Ironically, that recipe, even if it had been immensely successful, as we started to fundraise more money, I remember having this anxiety that was getting bigger and bigger, and I kept, confiding in my coach that okay, I was going to be a Series B and then Series C technology executive, and my life would just be a series of future proofing tech and scaling a business and looking at revenue as my North Star and living on a Zoom screen. And I remembered thinking, like, but what about me? I don't feel any of me inside of this. I feel like it's building a thing. And then I met you both and thought, okay, what they're doing, what they aspire to do, feels like it's serving the same mission, really to create a healthier world. But the how they're doing it feels so much more resonant for me. And it feels so much more human in terms of how do you cultivate connection with facilitators? How do you co-create a better world together?
Yeah, and I mean, you were kind of in this in-between place of having started your own company and been on this fast track toward what looked like imminent success, and then at the same time going through this big like reset moment, or as we like to call them, death portals. And it felt like the lessons that you harvested from that were really valuable also for, like, one of the biggest gifts that you've given us, I think, in the journey has been illuminating a lot of our blind spots. And I don't think you can illuminate other people's blind spots if you haven't gone through a process of having your own illuminated, which is always a painful process. Like, expanding your awareness is not necessarily fun. It sounds great in theory, but you're actually just seeing all the parts of yourself that are like in contradiction with what you want to be or who you say you want to be.
Yeah, I think of it like they say in order to build muscle, you actually have to tear the muscle, right? I felt like it was like I went through an immense muscle tearing of myself, my intellectual and spiritual and purpose-driven self when I met you. And there is learning for me ultimately. I think the question when you're an entrepreneur and you give everything, you have a mission inside of you that you feel is like a directive that you are meant to carry forward. So there's this feeling of responsibility, of like a destiny that you can see in the vision that no one else can, but you're trusting yourself. And then when that goes other than you expected, there's also a crisis of consciousness where you wonder, am I just full of shit? Like, did I ever actually believe that? Or did I trick myself into believing that? Or is my judgment completely wrong? Can I be trusted with anything? And that was really the 6 months before we met. The journey I knew I needed to go on was questioning my beliefs and the belief system that led me to the point to where I had really, also in myself, I had come to a place of taking radical responsibility for everything and saying, I have co-created all of this. How can I approach life differently so that I don't find myself in this position again?
Maybe share a little bit about what happened with Kensho.
Yeah, I mean, we were a startup just like any other. So I wouldn't say that we had reached the place of immense success or full product market fit.
I meant
But
imminent.
yeah, we
Yeah,
had
it was coming.
it was
Yeah.
we had been on a path of moving forward. And there's like the early stage, I think, when I met you guys, it was really you were in the kind of the pre-seed stage, and we had gone through the pre-seed stage and then the seed stage, and then we're in the Series A. And in that moment, there were some illuminations uncovered that left the business in a place of vulnerability and insecurity, financially and legally, that myself and our investors, we didn't know about. And there's a moment as the CEO to say, if someone doesn't know about something, certainly I should know. So I take full accountability and responsibility, and having to then really, to kill your baby was so challenging because I had also put all of myself into that. And so I think there was an attachment to the vision of how I would achieve the mission. There was an attachment to what success was. And I had been so heavily entrained as a serial entrepreneur in the venture-backed world to focus not only on impact, but also on exit. And when you're looking at venture, the core metric is just, can I 10x this in 7 years? That's the path that every venture investor is looking at. So you then building something for investment need to be able to prove that you are capable of creating that return. But it's very easy to lose yourself inside of that. And my story is not unique. And when I look back, I look at, there was all these metrics that are, one of our investors was Female Founders Fund, and they've invested in every big female CEO from, Rent the Runway to I don't know, I mean, everyone. And as an entrepreneur, I think there was the introduction of venture and the widespread use of venture really in the 90s, the early 2000s, the emergence of mobile, the appification of everything era, meant that was the pathway where you were supposed to channel your energy and your intellect if you were capable of doing something. And I think, a lot of the friends that I now have in my life, it's like they either came from investment banking or they went straight into tech. They hustled within a company in a junior role. They went and joined another company in a more senior role. They exited that company. And when I did that, I went and saw an investor, kind of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life. And he said, don't use an A team brain on a D team problem. And so I thought, okay, I need a big problem and I need to solve it. And it wasn't actually an internal savior complex. It was almost as if a parent is telling you, like, don't mess it up, do this right. And so I felt this immense responsibility to do something bigger than I had done before, bigger and better, and to drive a bigger and better return for investors. And when I zoom out now and look back, you're also in your early 30s, single. So I'm running my household, I'm running my life. I'm also playing very much at times a matriarch role in my extended family. You're navigating life and you're trying to hold a business. And there's a fallacy in entrepreneurship that it's just like excited and gung ho. Really, until recently, I think there's been a lot of the female founders have unearthed this quiet culture of, cancel culture and suffering. It's like it's not glamorous. It's miserable. You're working too much, you're making too little, you're throwing your whole life into something because you want to achieve a mission. I mean, does that resonate?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the question, right? Is I think that there can be a lot of suffering in it, and I certainly have had moments where I've been very close to burnout in this journey of birthing KAVANÂ, and this is a new experience for me, being in the entrepreneurial seat and being a first-time founder and not really having any history or experience in this realm at all. So coming from mostly, an artistic healing arts background, and having also cultivated, I would say, my strongest skill set is almost like in the nonlinear. It's like it's in the feeling, it's in the intuition, it's in the trusting the emergence of what's happening in the moment and not needing a plan. Like I feel like I spent many years like deprogramming my need to know what's going to happen and learning to trust the unknown radically. And in that process discovering that there's so much magic in the unknown. But then stepping into entrepreneurship and all of a sudden you're spending significant amounts of capital just on your team every month, and you can't necessarily be like, guys, we're just going to not know what's going to happen next week. Like there is also strategy needed and a plan and a commitment to stay focused on that plan. So there's been that push and pull, and I think a lot of very, very rarely do startups end up doing the thing they started out thinking they were going to do, right? There's often a pivot. And what is it, the trough of sorrow that you you mentioned? Like there's the like, yay, we got our funding, now we're doing the thing, and then oh shit, we don't have product market fit, and then you go downhill really rapidly. I feel like we were in the trough of sorrow or approaching the trough of sorrow when we met you, in a way. We were like, wait, maybe the way we're doing this is actually not the way. And it was an unraveling process. So it's interesting because in a way you went through this death portal with your company right before you met us. And then you had sort of come back into your power, at least enough to like be ready for a new chapter. And then you started doulaying and midwifing us through our own mini version of a death portal. Not obviously the death of the organization itself, but the death of a particular way of expressing the mission, right? Which when we started was very much more of a personal brand. And has now evolved also with your guidance into more of an organizational company, really like a venture that is truly led by a team of people, and it's not about any one person and their personal story, which is very foreign to me because having been an actress and having always been the product or the face or the thing that opens doors, and my personal story or my emotions or my voice being kind of the tool with which to imprint the world with my message, it's been a real adjustment. Like I couldn't even really fully wrap my head around what it would look like to be a true organization and not be sort of at the helm of it or at the front of it as the face. And you helped me understand the difference between those two things, which has been really enlightening, truly. And I'm grateful for that, even when I kicked and screamed throughout it.
Birthing. I mean, I
Yeah.
haven't heard of many women who are like, oh, that was delightful.
Yeah.
And we're done.
And we're done.
See. No, I think it's funny, the birthing, I had gone through a death portal, but I had also gone through a number of experiences where I knew exactly what it looked like and what the techniques were to birth something that felt easeful. And I'm very grateful to all of the many, many, many organizations that I was a part of where I learned from the way to do things to make it easy. It's like you could go try to climb a mountain and just wing it. You can also look up the packing list and the route and the weather and maybe suffer a little bit less. And so there was enough knowledge that I also had, I would say, really when I feel inside myself, when I reflect on Kensho, I never had the full fluid feeling of it's working. I always had a feeling of, why is there so much resistance here? And that was a very odd and destabilizing experience because I hadn't experienced that elsewhere. And I thought, I know I want to help people. I know that there is a market for this product, but I also feel like the universe is fighting me. And I can think back to other ventures and there are challenges, but I felt like the universe was on the side of those projects. And I would say to my then business partner, this doesn't feel like I remember it feeling. And I think that's ultimately the feeling, we can call it energetics, but the energy in business that you're looking for is there is challenge, there's tumultuousness, there might even be a boulder in the road, but you feel like you're able to float over that. There's fluidity.
And there's an inevitability too, I think, when you're in alignment with something and it's really wanting to happen, then it's like we call it the choiceless choice. Even if it's difficult and there's passages that are challenging, there's still something, yeah, carrying you through those moments, right? Yeah. And there's almost like, yeah, it's undeniable. Like this thing wants to exist. And I think that whatever the energy was that you first received that gave you the spark to create Kensho, that moved through you into what Kensho was when it existed, that current of energy hasn't died. It's just found a new form of expression, and now it's flowing into KAVANÂ, and KAVANÂ is in so many ways so similar to what you were doing, with some major distinctions as well. But maybe you could talk a little bit about the parallels of the two.
I'm happier. So that's fun, selfishly. No, I mean, Kensho started as really from a place of how do you help people find the practitioners who might serve them with greater ease? Because I had come from this alpha world, despite growing up as a pretty hardcore crunchy granola hippie family, coming into this alpha business world and then not knowing that all of these modalities existed, and ultimately in those finding a pathway towards greater happiness, health, and wholeness in myself. And when that journey happened, people then came to me and said, hey, where can I find a coach near me? Or where can I find an acupuncturist? Where can I find someone in Tantra? Where can I find a naturopathic
Where
doctor?
are the wizards?
Where are the wizards? No, but really, they're like, where is it? And then I found, oh, I don't know what to tell you because I actually don't know the market in your market because it's not in a directory like the rest of traditional healthcare. So that was the origin of the problem. And then the desire to create a solution was just ease of access, which I would say in many ways KAVANÂ is solving for by creating a brand that's large and accessible enough to people outside of its direct reach to find the wisdom of those facilitators, to find their courses and work with them, to attend their retreats. I think Esalen has done an exceptional job of doing that, really did an exceptional job of doing that in the 60s and really leading the human potential movement in the same way I think KAVANÂ aspires to do the same in this new movement that's really around beyond personal potential, but collective potential.
Yeah.
If you not only if you unstick your stuff, but if you unstick your stuff and then work together, what happens? And then once after we built the network and the community, through active listening and working with our facilitators for so many years, we began to better understand their challenges and also the challenges of the end user. And so much like KAVANÂ, we were servicing a B2B side, and then we had a B2C side, and we found on B2C that they needed more consistent engagement and really like an advocate to work with them. And I myself also went back to school for transformative coaching theory, transformative psychology and coaching theory. And so lo and behold, KAVANÂ has a space that is designed to serve facilitators and give them the tools they need to be successful, similar, and offers coaching programs for people to help them really ignite their own ripple of impact. And ties the two together. And so I think, I don't know any entrepreneur out there. I wish I could tell them just to maintain the vision, but also let go of attachment of believing that you know what the right way is to get it there. I think, the outcome here isn't one that was prosperous for my investors, which is a source of shame as an entrepreneur. And then you speak to those investors and they say, well, 98% of them aren't. And you're like, I never even once for a moment genuinely thought I could fail. Not because I felt like I was so important, but because I hadn't had a failure yet. And so I thought, well, of course, the pattern will persist. Like, I'm good. Whatever I do will work. And really reframing that narrative of failure is not trying and getting an outcome that's different than you expected. Failure is not trying at all. So taking that leap of faith and getting rid of my own limiting beliefs and learning, oh, you can get people to give you many millions of dollars. You can figure it out. You can utilize your intellect and your community to answer questions that, no one's asked before and to create something that hasn't existed. All of that chaos is really the gift wrapped in thorns that then gets to be passed on, to KAVANÂ in some ways.
Yeah.
I suffered for you.
Thank you for your sacrifice, darling. I will harvest the sweet fruits of your pain and suffering. No, but it is these moments forge us, right? And there is, I think, when we're powerful, and part of the journey of transforming and becoming more of who you really are is also connecting to your power, your innate creative power, to shape your reality, right? And to have an impact on other humans and on the planet. Like, that is, every single person on this planet has that power. We're disconnected from it most of the time. We don't know how to use it. But I think that the shadow side of power is arrogance. And ultimately, the only way to avoid being powerful and not falling into the pitfall of arrogance is to be humbled. And the only way to be humbled is to run headfirst into a brick wall every now and then and be like, holy shit, that did not work. Like, I gave it everything I had and it did not work. And it's painful, but on the other side of that, I think there's the power can be wielded with more humility and grace, and knowing that nothing is guaranteed. We don't want to take any of it for granted. And because of that, we have more chance to actually succeed.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. You also, I think in the past, if I think of my past self, I felt such a pressure to have the answer. And I think that's a pressure that any CEO feels, or any inexperienced CEO, actually. And then what that has grown into now is not a pressure to have the answers, but a pressure to find the answers and to be the first to raise my hand when I'm like, I don't think that we have that answer. I think we should go find someone who has that answer. Let's go ask around. Let's do the research. Let's cultivate an awareness that isn't there rather than making an assumption. And I also now will be the last person to volunteer for anything that I don't think I can accomplish. Whereas in the past, there was a feeling of needing to do it all, of needing to solve it all, of almost this like masochism. And I think that's just a younger version of self. Doesn't need to be that hard. Yeah. But my hope is that the community that we cultivated at Kensho, that we built, really Danny and I together built so intimately over years, really speaking to every facilitator, caring about their journeys, caring about their practices, caring about the gifts that they're stewarding into these worlds, learning about their unique challenges, that KAVANÂ can serve actually as a connective tissue for those facilitators. Because one of the biggest gifts that we heard people were looking for was actually community. And that being a facilitator can be such an isolating experience where you're in your own world, but what you'd really love is to just commune with people who aren't you and who have a similar life calling, where the majority are, sole proprietors. They're independent practitioners. They're not working with people side by side. And as you know, like, entrepreneurship is far more fun with others. So my hope is that we can steward that camaraderie and create a community that really serves as a meeting point of convergence. And particularly for those practitioners who are more invested in not only their own practice, but deepening the field of practice through KAVANÂ's Learning Institute. Because there's really an opportunity to ingratiate those practitioners who are deeply invested in expanding the field and tying them together with research, with inquiry, with becoming students of facilitation itself.
The world needs it. Like, the number one thing that I believe is creating so much of the chaos and destruction on our planet is the fact that we don't have the tools to know how to navigate our emotions, our energy, our relationship to the challenges of life. We're taught and programmed by our culture to repress and deny the negative feelings, and they get stuck in us, and they manifest as disease, they manifest as dysfunction, they manifest as violence. And if we can really start to understand how to unlock those energies inside of ourselves and liberate them and come into harmony within ourselves, everything changes. The ripple effect of that is massive. And you cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. So you could create all the technologies and all the widgets to try and fix, climate change and end wars. But if you're not doing the inner work as the founder of those companies, you're going to have blind spots.
Yeah.
And that's why coming together as collectively and recognizing no matter how advanced we are as facilitators, as practitioners, as community leaders, as people who are in the field of transformational work, no matter how many decades we might have been doing that, we all have blind spots and we're all making assumptions. And the only way to avoid the pitfalls of those is to be surrounded by others who we trust, who can reflect those back to us in a loving way, so that we can go, holy shit, thank you so much for pointing out. I was totally making an assumption there. I was totally, in the knowing when I should have been in the listening. And together we grow stronger. And it's the only way forward. So that's why the Learning Institute is a learning institute. It's not a teaching institute. It's a learning institute. We're here to learn together, because none of us have it figured out. None of us have the answer with a capital A. We have pieces of the puzzle we can contribute. And so, yeah, I'm excited to get to know the beautiful community that you've cultivated and weave their gifts into the basket of beautiful tools and modalities and frameworks that can help our human family thrive.
Small mission, small goal. We just want to help our human family thrive.
That's it.
No, it is true. I smiled there. The gift of reflection, and hindsight's 2020, right, in yourself. But one of the beautiful things of co-creating is you don't have to wait for hindsight to receive reflection. And in our lives, when we try to figure it out on our own, we do have to run straight into the wall, feel the impact of that, and then course correct. Whereas when we're walking side by side with someone, we can offer course correction so that no one runs into the wall or the iceberg or whatever obstacle is in our path.
Yeah. Well, I'm so delighted and honored to be in the co-creation with you and to receive your reflections and to have my reflections received by you and to be in that mirroring. I feel like we've both grown in beautiful ways since we came together, even when it hasn't always been easy.
Yeah, but I think there's a balancing in it. I think on a personal level, our journeys have also come together, and there have been questions in ourselves that we've each been asking where the other has gone through the genesis of that experience. And there's the ability to illuminate this might be possible. But yeah, I just, if I look back at the hitting the iceberg, and I actually didn't know a physical body could feel as much fear or anguish or distress as I did at that moment in my life. And going through that, and then also anchoring into this internal instinct that I just needed to take some space and the next thing would show up. And I should not say yes to becoming the senior director of technology to a Swedish health tech company. That was probably not my goal. It's just that you never know what's around the corner. You really don't know what the limitless possibilities are in life, and letting go of ego. Like I just, I hope every entrepreneur out there feels some knowing that 98% of companies don't work out. I was only fed the like only 2% of women raise and you did it, and only 1% of startups raise again, and only 1%. And you're like, oh my God, I'm the 0.0003%. Wow. You're like, yes, and be humbled because there is a 99.97% chance that this doesn't work out for you, kid. And I think we should celebrate victory, as like we should celebrate success, but we should also celebrate effort. And that's a very contrarian belief in our American society, but to celebrate, what is it, like those who dare to get into the arena. And it takes a lot of courage. And then to also celebrate the accountability of owning when it didn't go well, and saying, I co-created that. I can't blame that on anyone else. I was complicit in its creation, whatever the outcome is. And then letting go. Like maybe it turns into something that's more fun. It is wild. Once there was Kensho, once there was becoming. Now there is just KAVANÂ.
Love you.
Love you.
Beautiful.